Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today or this evening, depending on where you are calling in from. But just wanted to um, just reintroduce what the topic is for today, just in case anyone didn't have an opportunity to read it and just click in for the title. Myself, Sandra, and Valerie came together following someone bringing us together, actually, because we are all three melanin-rich founders of community gardens and allotment spaces in London. And so part of today, we want to take you on as interactive as we can be, because when we first signed up for this, we were hoping, well, we were going to be in person. And so some of the interactive elements are no longer present, but our presence here just today is also a form of interaction. So we're going to take the next hour and a half and discuss African heritage, horticulturalism, and herbalism. We'll also have a moment of exploring like the food history and spirituality, environmental impacts on the diaspora, to politicizing the Black body, and what solutions we can achieve in a world where sustainability merely slows down affliction but does not heal it. And so today we're going to go through some questions, as Kim just mentioned, and then you also have an opportunity to ask us any questions that you like, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. And just a bit of a disclaimer, I'm very aware if you are looking on, if you would have signed up, you would have saw that my name says Andrea. That too is also my name, but most people call me Dre, so don't feel like, where is Andrea? She is me, I am here. And with that said, I'm going to hand over to Sandra, who is going to ground us into the session, which is very much a part of African heritage and spirituality. So.
Okay. Good after evening, everybody. Welcome and thank you for having me on your screen. Thank you. Okay, so I just want everyone to kind of sit straight up. And I'm just going to start by acknowledging my ancestors and a little bit of a libation, which is usually how we get some water, and this water has been blessed. And basically all I'm going to do is just give thanks to everything that is what it is. Give thanks to everyone who's present at this group right now. Give thanks to all those that came before us. Give thanks to our families. Give thanks to the land. Give thanks to the energies, to the netters. Give thanks to our Mother Earth. Give thanks to our breath of life. Give thanks to the Almighty. And I just want everybody just to feel the happiness and just know that there's no right or wrong in this session. We're just going to be sharing our inner and most, I won't say feelings, but what we are about, and we really hope that you all enjoy that. So I'm just going to finish by just taking a deep breath. I want everyone to sit on their chair very very steady, and perhaps just put your right hand on your heart chakra, and I want you to feel just I'm going to go through three breathing exercises very quickly, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. So I want you to really take a breath in and make sure that you inhale it and lungs out as much as you can. I want to hold it for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, let go for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, stop. Hold it. Let go. 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. Now let it all go. And we're going to do that 2 more times. Okay, let's do it again. Right, inhale. Hold. Let go. Hold. Let go. Hold. Let it all out. Last one. Inhale. Hold. Let go. hold, let go, hold, let it all go. Ashe. And we do this, Ashe, we give thanks to all the everything that is what it is. We do this also, not just, it's very important that breath and the breath exercises that we do, very important because it takes us to different heights. And that's the source, you know, spiritually. I'm not going to go into it right now, but spiritually, our biphones in our mind, which are the electrical waves, they are source of information between the different realms. And in our tradition, that has a lot to do with how we communicate and how we receive messages. So, and it makes you feel good as well. So everyone, thank you very much for allowing me to share this space with you. Thank you. Thanks. And that's it. We can start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sis Sandra. That was a blessed moment. Feeling very calm right now. And thank you, Dre, for opening us up to the public. And thank you, ORFC, for having us. Thank you, Lion, Landing Unknown, for opening up this justice room, which is much needed and in a timely fashion. So I'm going to begin conversations surrounding my garden, introduce myself. My name is Valerie, and I run Coco Collective, which is an Afro diaspora-led community organisation. We use our cultural heritage esteem to illustrate a sustainable and regenerative future. And under our autonomy as well. And one of the ways in which we do that is through our Ital Community Garden. I believe we've got some slides readily available. We can have the first one up. Fabulous. So this is our Ital Community Garden. It's only 6 months old. We're still babies, but the point is to focus on growing Afro heritage foods. Things like Spanish thyme or balm of Gilead, fever grass, Scotch bonnets, okras, etc. And also experiment with growing yams, which is notoriously difficult to catch in this climate. So I mentioned about regenerative systems. So as well as using the soil in a permacultural fashion, we like to look at our organisation in a regenerative way as well. So that means implementing social prescribing services for this year. Social prescribing is a service that intervenes with people who have mild mental health issues, depression, anxiety caused by isolation and COVID itself. And gardening can be such a great intervention method, being that gardening itself is very therapeutic. You get to meet all sorts of people. You get to do a bit of exercise and be inspired to practice healthier lifestyles as well. Another regenerative method that we want to implement is with young people taking on leadership roles as part of our organisation. So we're very grateful that we have a young 21-year-old who was recently appointed director. He's a politics student and also a keen gardener. And in the climate that we currently live in, where job security has for the longest while never been secure, but even more so post-COVID, I think it's great that we as a community can offer young people platforms to practice leadership roles, take on responsibility and accountability for and on behalf of a business. And so we're just going to play a video that shows one of the impacts on one of our members.
it's about connecting to like our roots. I feel like as Black people, especially like Black people in the UK, like we're so estranged from like the countryside, we're so estranged from like green spaces, and because like so many people, like most Black people, are just packed into this city. Like we live in like places, in houses, in flats, no place to like grow anything. There's no place apart from like public parks to really like be with the ground. Like we don't have that like that personal like connection anymore. And when we think about our ancestors, we think about like our ancestors really like touching, feeling, connecting with that land. And so like as a Black space, as a Black community garden, that's a way to like reconnect, to like to even like retouch like the stories of the past, and just like move towards like a more like sustainable, like self-sufficient like future. And it's a future where we don't need to rely on like other people to do things for us. We don't need to rely on like supermarkets. We can go and like just create and grow and build these things like as a community together, but in order to be like self-sufficient. So yeah, I think it's a powerful garden as well, like having like the older generation like come along with the younger generation. Like it's a skill share, like everybody's like in this community, like that is real community, like being with one another and helping each other to grow, like in a literal sense and in a metaphorical sense. So yeah, it's Black power.
So we've had a number of events on our land. The video that's shown right now shows our event space, which is available to hire. If you have a workshop that you want to put on, or you're a business that is looking to hold an outdoor space to promote your services and products, then by all means do get in touch. But actually that video before shows the study that we're putting on for Black people, sorry, the lack of access for Black people or people of colour into green spaces and food growing spaces. So this is an ongoing study that we're doing at the moment. If you'd like to contribute to that, again, do get in touch with us. So our contact details are now following. So you can see our email address there and our social media handles, but do also follow us on Eventbrite, where you will be notified of any upcoming events and also our gardening opening day. So this Sunday we are open. We are building our polytunnels, mini polytunnels, 12 till 4. So do get in touch with us if you can. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sister Val. Thank you for that. That's awesome. I've heard so many beautiful things about the project and the wonderful work that you do. So many of our sisters have come from your project and spoke very highly of what they're learning and how they get involved and how bright and fun you are to be around. So give thanks. All right. So is it my turn to say who I am and what I do?
Yes, sis.
Please.
Go for it.
Let's kind of just put myself in anyway. So, so I am Sandra. I am a horticulturist, a community horticulturist. I started my journey when I became a mum, and I think the whole world knows about this. Anyone who asks me what I do and who I am, I always start with the same thing, when I became a mum. But actually, I had a dream. Back in the days, way about 20 years ago, I had a dream. I had a dream that I was going to become a farmer, which was it had to be a dream, because there's no way back then that I would have ever thought that I would get my hands and my nails dirty with soil. No way. But once I became a mum, everything changed. So I'm a horticulturist, and I through my motherhood, I began teaching and practicing gardening food growing skills in schools, teaching children and teaching parents in the local community how to grow their own food and how to cook and how to share tips and how to become self-sustainable. So I personally support the running of various community projects, and I love that. I love sharing what I am and what I do. And as a farmer, because of my passion around food growing and nature, and especially Indigenous holistic living and traditional traditional living, should I say traditional African living. I love to share. Sorry, I love that video. Thank you for playing that. Yeah, so I love to share that, and I love to make that a topic, a subject, a way of life. You know, food has been a center of our lives for many, forever. Food and herbals. We always turn to nature for comfort, for well-being, for sharing, for guidance. So that's where my background. That's my background, and I wanted to share the passion that I developed from nature with everybody. But then I thought of how I feel as a mother. And I thought every mom should actually, you know, because every time I invited sisters to come to the land, they weren't really sure about, and I saw the gap, they weren't really sure about coming to the land. They love the concept of being self-sustainable and being natural and organic. But when it comes to actually making the product, that wasn't the case as such. And working in schools and working with parents, I saw there was a gap there between the parents and the children, where the children would grow the food and they were very happy doing so. And once they shared that with the parents did not share the same enthusiasm. So after many years of trying to connect with the parents in schools, I was given the opportunity by Sister Paulette, the coordinator for Black Roots, and also Land Workers Alliance, D-Woods, to begin a project called Women Leading with the Land. And the project is nearly a year old. And I have to say, it was the best thing that I've done, because I was able to connect with so many sisters. And I've just been on the learning journey with them. So Women Leading with the Land is a grassroots project, and it focuses on women of African Caribbean heritage to teach yourself skills in culturally appropriate food growing, so the traditional African food or Caribbean foods, to assist with the local economy. The program is based on practical horticultural activities, and it complements and supports mental and physical well-being, spiritual well-being also. On our first session, I think we signed up over 33 women, which is awesome. And, you know, that's just been going stronger and stronger by the week. All right, our program is divided into 4 quarters to reflect on the seasons. And we go really deep when it comes to soil and soil cultivation. We really enjoy the learning that takes place on our lands. And we enjoy all the rituals that come with it as well, because we have a great respect for Mother Nature and everything that Mother Nature gives us. And we also have a great respect for our traditions. So we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. So yeah, come and visit when you get a chance. And last year, in 2022. Last year, we were able to grow quite a lot, and we were able to share all of that with our community, parents in schools, community centers. So we shared all our produce, basically. So we grew a lot of aubergines, we grew butternut squash, we grew a lot of callaloo, different types of callaloo, chocho, chilies, all different kales, okras. We grew about 5 varieties of okras. We grew lots of different beans, pimento, sweet potato, various varieties of spinach, sweet peppers, gourds, kudu, edible flowers. But the one that I'm mostly proud of is the African horn cucumber, because that is just a beauty in itself. I don't know, you may see it on the slides. And yeah, so
what would you like to accomplish?
Oh, that's me talking. And yeah, so it's been good, and I look forward to sharing more about what we do and what we're about throughout this session. So thank you for listening. I'll pass it over to Sister Dre now.
Oh, that was lovely. It was lovely seeing the videos. I don't have a slideshow for you all, but I will just share with my voice. And what's also very interesting from watching the videos is I've just realized that Sandra and I were in the same place in 2019, thanks to the photo, and thanks to Lion for bringing us together in Oxford in,
Yes.
was it 2019?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Now I can remember you.
Yes, I'm like, I know this face, but the penny
Love
dropped when you showed the photo. So thank you for clarifying my memories. My project is also relatively new. We started, so just to give a bit of information, or my journey started maybe 2013 with the growing, and part of it truly was out of fear. I, realized I was completely dependent on the grocery store to provide all of my needs, and it was like, if something happened, I cannot feed myself, and that terrified me, and that got me growing. And many people must have thought I had lost my mind, especially being from the South, as you probably knows from my accent. It's not a British accent. I'm originally from South Carolina. So being from the South and speaking of growing anything, when many of our ancestors in the generation before us, were fleeing the South and fleeing the land, which we'll come to a bit more later. For me, it felt that it wasn't something I should flee. It was something that I should draw more closely to, because that is where my ancestors are. That is where, my heritage and knowledge is residing. And why should I fear that? And so I came back, went on a permaculture course, did horticulture training with Walworth Gardens. And my teacher there was really supportive, and helped me find a place to start growing. And I first started off by teaching children, because I thought, why isn't this in schools? Like, how did I not learn how to, nourish myself in school? And that felt like the biggest lesson that I wasn't taught. And then lockdown happened, and I started teaching online sessions and holding online workshops about how to grow, how to propagate, how to, don't worry if you don't have a seed. There are some things that you can, start, as long as you have at least that produce, if that you can, grow from that. And that was pretty much my lockdown. And then as soon as the opportunity came to get a physical space, I jumped on the opportunity. So it was a different forming and growing of community in comparison to Coco Collective and GoGrow With Love. That song is going to be stuck in my head every time I water anything now. And that, because we were shifting from being online, for me, it was important that we didn't stay online. Many of us didn't have spaces, garden spaces that they could access during the pandemic. So that's also partly why. And we also started in the middle of the growing season. So it was, end of May, beginning of June, when we were allotted the space. And thinking of seedlings, and it's just a lot of when you start growing, starting now. And so that part of that moment had been lost. And so we were thinking about, a lot of it was planning, and the space that we were provided. For me, it was important not to just go and completely uproot everything. It was to see what was there, and to then see, where to next. And so we started with harvesting a lot of seeds, allowing a lot of the things that were already there to go to flower and then seed. So we will hopefully be starting a seed swap and seed saving, something. Can't figure words at the moment. Usually at this hour, I'm like computer closed, so my words may not come out very clearly, but yeah, so watch this space. We will be having seed exchange. The moment we have some we're very fortunate in the space we're based. So the name of the group that we call ourselves is Seeds of Contentment. And Seeds of Contentment is a collective of people from pretty much all over. But what I've also mainly realized is many of us, our histories have had some form of oppression or erosion through various things. So we, and many of our seeds that we grow have, started planted into the earth, have been either passed down to us from, from generations. So what our space is essentially a collection of collective intelligence, diverse intelligence, and we'll be having an online presence soon. But for us, it was important to shift from that online space and be in relationship and fellowship with each other, and be able to connect in a physical way and not only in this digital way, which we were very aware that we knew how to do. So that's enough for us right now. I'm going to shift over to questions. We have a few questions that came to us that we would love to share with you all, well, respond to. So basically the panel is about to happen now.
There have been many questions and comments, observations coming through the chat. So thank you very much for all of that. I'm sure we'll probably get through to commenting on top of that as well towards the end. But yeah, let's have some questions through. Okay, what challenges do you face being melanin-rich women working in promoting nature in the diaspora? Shall I go first? Seeing as I read it out. Where do I begin? We live in an oppressive system. That is undeniable. You can't deny that. For me personally, when I did find this piece of land, I was actually working with a white-led garden. This is how I first got introduced into horticultural practices. And I found, very surprisingly actually, because it's meant to be a community space, I walked in assuming that people were of a love in nature. And I found that yes, on one hand, these people wanted my Black presence and everything to do with my heritage. But on another, I felt that there were hurdles there, that I wasn't able really to express exactly what it is that I wanted to do. And this is why I'm very adamant that we have autonomy. This is such a key word for us, for me. Autonomy in developing our spaces, our green spaces for and on behalf of people of colour. And so I found myself in a situation whereby it was like, yes, okay, let's all get together and sort of dismantle this whole systemic racism thing. But in actual fact, when I want to grow my food, there's some sort of, hurdle and slight barrier there. So I went back to the council and I expressed to them, this is we're in a good time now really for us to have our own space and to have our own autonomy. Thank you very much for that person who's just written, is it autonomy or sovereignty? I think it's a little bit of both. And he jumped at the idea. I was like, wow, this is easy. So in actual fact, accessing a space that is Black-led in Lewisham in itself wasn't that hard. Finding the people to come and turn the soil, etc., that again hasn't been difficult. It's not a difficult sell to say we are the first in Southeast London. Roots into Food Growing is the first Black-led community garden space, and they're based in North London, and we are the first in Southeast London. or South London. And so that in itself hasn't been a hard sell to get people through the door. In actual fact, we've had around 300 people that have come through since inception. Since June 19 is when we got the keys. So working in promoting nature in the diaspora. Now that was one of or part of a question that we had on our land when we were discussing the lack of access for people of colour into green spaces and food growing spaces. And one of the, I guess, feedback was people not having the time, not having the, or being afforded the time to sort of educate or even, you know, pass down that very important information from the elder generation within the family. And, you know, the idea of becoming a gardener is not exactly, you know, a money making type of career for a young person. But people, particularly single mothers, we found, have very little time to sort of, you know, grow their own food or even teach their youngsters about growing food. And so, yeah, it's been good. We've had a lot of good people that have come through the garden, but in terms of sort of turning that into a career option, or as a viable career option in people's minds, that is really where the bottleneck is. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about accessing finance and the whole bid writing or bid assessing process, and how lack of diversity really does create an oppressive system for us. That was long, sorry. Who wants to go next?
I'm good to go. Thank you very much, Sister Val, for that. So what challenges do I face being a melanin-rich woman working to promote nature in the diaspora? For one, the way that we promote nature is not the same way here in the UK. It's definitely not the same way as back home. Back home, we're much more free. We are opened, we are in tune. Oh, that's how I remember myself, you know, my family and yeah, and my community. If anything is wrong with you, you go to nature, and nature will cure you. Not kill you, cure you, sorry. So I guess that's the difference here in the Western and in Africa. Being melanin rich and running a, actually, I'd like to share this. The thing is that I've worked in many projects before around food growing over my 12 years that I've been in horticulture. And when it comes to community projects and community-led projects, there isn't much melanin-rich people about. It's very much middle class, or it was very much middle class dominated, white dominated in projects. However, it wasn't until I started attending to allotments that I see that's where the elders were. In allotments community, in plots and allotment plots, you would see that we still have so many melanin rich, so many, and not just, you know, just from the diversity is immense, but they're mainly elders, keen to grow, but not for sale. They're just growing because they want to give it to the neighbor or give it to the family, but it's not really an enterprise aspect. They're not going for the enterprise. They're going for their mental and physical well-being and a reminder of back home also. So those were the challenges that I faced personally. The challenge was mainly how to obtain land, perhaps not being taken seriously, not knowing how to finance the project that you want to provide and the service that you want to provide. So in terms of support, the support was a little bit minimal. But now in 2022, especially after, the whole world has been in lockdown, things have changed. And there's just this energy that is very much a driven energy that just wants, instead of us focusing on problems, it's all solution based. How can we make it better? How can we, especially after what's happened during the lockdown, I feel like we are more in tune to get our we are more serious about our well-being, which is really how we should be. We are now enticed to go to nature for answers, for guidance. We're now enticed to look into our ancestors, look into our history for answers and for guidance. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And when conversations like this are taking place, and we are facing and talking and being open with one another because we want to see a better today, it's awesome. And we are doing the work. We are doing the work. So I would like to say thank you to everyone. And I think I can definitely, over my 12 years, I can see the difference, and I can see how things are getting better. But yeah, it has taken a lot of work, but we are getting there. And there's some awesome people behind the scenes that are just doing it, justice to make sure that we are all doing what we're meant to be doing, and we're growing the food, not only just for enterprise, but to, what would I say? Yeah, I'll leave it as that. Be doing what we're meant to be doing. Yeah. So I'll pass on the question now to Sister Joy.
Thank you, Sandra. What challenges do I face? I have different moments of challenges. I like to think about it as pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic, or during, because we're still in it. In 2016, I had the opportunity, had space, land, but not the momentum, and the momentum that and just the interest. And that was partly due to land trauma, the relationship with the land, like as I've mentioned before. And so a lot of people looked at the land as if the issue was with the land instead of the people who were separating us, the impact that colonization had in separating the people from the land, mentally, as well as physically. And so part of that, from trying to start, to get people growing earlier, that was one of the barriers or challenges. And also within that challenge, what I realized is that there needed to be the mindsets needed to shift. And so it wasn't just about reestablishing a relationship, about that transmission of knowledge in terms of how to grow. And, as mentioned earlier, our ancestors and our elders they're leaving us, and the knowledge is going with them. So it wasn't just about that transmission of knowledge. It was also about that shift of mindset and, shifting that perspective of skepticism, of, why should I grow? And what does this mean? That just also that image, that sense of identity of being someone who's Black and growing and or engaging with the land. There's a lot of negativity that's associated with that. And that's something that we're still working to address, to change. And so I initially found myself as like a lone wolf. And like Sandra mentioned, I was going to all of these spaces, growing, but they were predominantly white. And what I later realized is that, oh no, there are other Black growers, but they're in allotments. I was just shift where I was looking. They're showing up at their allotments when they have time, when they have, or when also for them when it was therapeutic, versus someone who can do this between 9 to 5. And so that was one of the points of awareness that I had to become aware of. And then also like this defeatist attitude or capability, more not that attitude, more so about capability. I don't know how to grow, that sense of starting over. And I think the pandemic truly helped that so many people were able to, not commuting provided people with more time to realize what was capable. And so many people started new things, and starting over is hard. And so that was also something that I found that was a bit of a challenge. And also, and then location. Valerie had a smooth transition in being able to, walk into that space. Mine's wasn't, equally mine's was somewhat easy, but at some point we're going to need a larger space. This a plot.
Yeah.
And so it's great for now, predominantly because a lot of people were wanting a place to explore and try. But, as more people come, and the space will only hold so much. There's so many more seeds that won't be able to touch the soil because there isn't enough space for them. So we will need another location, but also within location, we need to think about, like, it's beautiful to know that I'm near Clapham North. Valerie's in Lewisham, and Sandra's in Tottenham. So it's great that we're in different parts of London, but when we think about time, we also have to think about cost. We also have to think about people and their care duties, and potentially working multiple jobs, but also wanting to be present. So this is another challenge. And working with people, you have to think about the constraints and all that they're bringing, because that's a part of community as well. That's a part of the diversity that's coming into the space, no different than what we're growing within that space. Climate. I was on the talk with David earlier today. He was very inspiring. He has a garden in infield, and just hearing about how many traditional foods that he's growing in London, despite, infield is in London, despite the climate. And I think that that's quite beautiful, but climate is also another challenge. Again, like, my ancestors are from Haiti, and I'm Haitian, and growing Haitian tomatoes in my community space was beautiful, but I also want to think about how many other things that I can grow. But climate is something I have to think about. And two other things that come to mind is knowledge. So again, like I mentioned earlier, starting something new can be scary. Knowledge hasn't been passed down for various reasons. And I think Josina mentioned earlier today on another call that in some research that they were doing, the eldest person they spoke to was 86. And if the eldest person, who grower in our community is 86, and I know that I know 96-year-olds, that's 10 more years of knowledge that we won't be able to access because they're no longer present with us. So to me, that is a challenge, because it may be written somewhere, but I don't have access to that book. And lastly, in the space that we're growing in, we have had so many stolen seedlings, and that has been so heartbreaking, because these are seeds that were passed down to someone. This is someone's story. This is someone's heritage. And to know that that has been taken from them, very much so as, their ancestors may have been taken, that hurts. So that to me has been one of the most painful challenges in growing and promoting nature in the diaspora, because someone who, do I share that story? Do I not share that story? It's the truth, and it's a potential reality that I've experienced. I hope other growers haven't experienced that in the same way, but those have been some of the challenges in promoting, and that I'm not even just promoting, but just being aware of in that promotion of nature and throughout the diaspora.
Wow, you brought up so many amazing points to do with us specifically as as melanated people in the land, which I think is going to bring us to the next question. Yes, what is the symbiotic relationship between melanin-rich women and the land? I'm going to take a little bit more of a generic approach to this and just kind of feed on what Dre had mentioned just earlier about the kind of negative connotation to do with growing food on the land. I think because especially Sandra, you've got way more experience in terms of growing food over here and internationally. So yeah, maybe you can talk more on that. But when setting up a Black-led food growing project, in one hand, it's very empowering. We have our own space, our own autonomy, our own sovereignty, but on the other, there is that we're working someone else's land again. You know, there is that connotation there. And then there is the what draws upon that or draws from that is, where is the support to maintain somebody else's land? And again, I think one of the questions that we'll answer a little bit later is to do with accessing finance and the whole bid assessing process. But yeah, I wanted to really touch upon that. For me personally, as a woman, having my hands in the soil, which is a new phenomenon for me over the last 6 months, is possibly as close to being my true and authentic self as I could possibly get to. And I absolutely love it. And, you know, it is something that I think ought to be taught more in schools as a prerequisite. Since the Second World War, we kind of lost the, you know, the education on how to sew, how to cook, how to grow our own food. You know, where are these skill sets? And so I'm hoping that more allotments and a lot more gardens like ours can teach the young people how to maintain this a skill set that once you have it, you never lose it. It's like riding a bike. Once you know how, you never lose that. That's my quick answer.
Thanks, Valerie. Thanks, Sister Val. Do I go next or do you want to go next, Dre? Because I'm already talking. Yeah, sorry about that. I would say, what is the symbiotic relationship between melanin-rich women and the land? I feel, well, as a melanin-rich woman, we have come from a traditionally, you know, as an Indigenous woman, traditionally, that's what our role was and is in many countries still. We tend to the land. You know, we nurture the land and we grow food. We know our role. I was talking to the generative women of the land earlier today, and I mentioned that how we all have our different roles. The men come in, they clear the land, the women come in, they step in and they work the land and they run the markets, right? I think it's fair to say, actually, I would say this, and this is what I feel, because this is my own personal opinion and my own personal downloads that I get from the ancestors. And they say land belongs to nobody. So the fact that we as human beings are here on this earth, on Mother Earth, yeah, as stewards of the land, we're stewards of land. That means we're caring for the land. The land does not belong to nobody, yeah. The land in itself can sustain itself. If anything happens, it's not the land that's going to get mashed up. It's we. So this is why this conversation is very important. Climate justice is important because climate justice addresses the informalities, and addresses topics and things that are happening that, you know, that we don't speak about, and we see it. In regards to land work is a life skill that everybody should know. I mean, come on, it's food. When I started to grow food with the children, I asked them one question. I asked them, where does food come from? And the answer was quite phenomenal. The answer was the food comes from the tin. The food comes from the freezer. The food comes from the fridge. None of them knew that the food comes from the land, right? So that just goes to say, and these are children, they're 5, they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they don't know that food comes from the land. So obviously there's something that's not working properly. So if food doesn't, where does it come from? Of course it comes from the land. What are you eating that you think that food doesn't come from the land? It makes no sense. So in my opinion, so definitely we need to address that. And as a melanin-rich woman, a woman of the land, indigenous women, we have that connection because the land is alive and it holds information. Every time you put your hand in the land, you feel something. There's an energy that goes from you, from the land to you, and vice versa. It creates an exchange. We call it the law of giving and receiving. And this is, and this is what I personally like to share when my sisters come to the land. I like to embrace and to really talk about that relationship that we have with the land and what a land actually means, right? As an indigenous woman of the land. And that's my answer. I hope that's okay.
4 things come to mind when I think, what is the symbolic relationship between melanin-rich women in the land? And the first thing that came to mind was fertility. And just thinking about our own fertility, but also the fertility of the land, but also cycles. We too have cycles, just as the land and nature has cycles. And another thing that, when I think of that relationship with land, I think of Haiti, and I think of how, as the first free Black republic, this wasn't just through people, this was with the land. It was because we knew the landscape, we knew the plants, we knew the seasons, just being so deeply connected with nature, with land, was also part of our ability to liberate ourselves. And a story that comes to mind when I think of, women in the land is, I remember being young and I would go to my grandma's house and she always made us eat watermelon outside. Now I love watermelon, but eating watermelon outside also means bees are gonna come around. And as a child, there's nothing more terrifying for me as my inner child. There's nothing more terrifying than being bit by ants, wasps, and bees. And so you can hear them, and you can see them, and it's either I, drop this watermelon or I'm swatting at bees. And there was no such thing as killing anything in nature at my grandma's house. So if you swatted at a bee, you got in trouble. And so that to me was just like, I couldn't understand that. And her, I don't remember the exact phrase, but it was something of the essence of like, killing the bees is killing yourself. And I don't know if that was, her knowing that I'm more likely to get stung and more bees are going to come from swatting, or if it's because she understood the relationship that, everything in nature plays a role. And then when one thing goes out, eventually we're all going to become extinct. So I like to think, both are beautiful, but I like to think it's more so the latter. And those are, the 4 things that come to mind when I think of, symbiotic relationships with land and nature, fertility, cycles, liberation, and also my survival is linked to the land. So those are the things that come to mind.
Thank you so much for your responses to these questions so far, Dre, Sandra, and Valerie. I'm also seeing some really great questions coming up in the chat. And so we really want to attend to some of those. So in the interest of time, I was just going to bring a couple of those up and see if you guys would like to respond to them. A few people are asking, D. Woods has said, the title of the session is provocative, especially as within the climate justice movement, climate justice is racial justice. I'm keen to hear the divergence in your views. And similarly, that came from Dora and Emily. So the tensions between climate justice and racial justice, is there anybody that would like to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Climate justice is racial justice. However, the mainstream doesn't quite make that connection. And this is where I guess an issue starts to arise, because when you're trying to teach about climate change and you're trying to teach about, say, regenerative systems, you cannot fight climate justice without first dismantling systemic racism. It's impossible, because climate justice has been born out of a system of economic power for one at the expense of another. Now, we know what that means. We're living in a capitalist structure. So that exemplifies that wholeheartedly. So we have come out of a imperialist system into a colonialist system, into a capitalist structure, and that's where we live right now. And everything to do with capitalism is based on buy low, sell high. So that can mean, you know, I'm coming from an ethical fashion background. So, and even prior to that, I was working as a designer for the fast fashion retailers. My last job in fashion was working out in China, and I got to see just how incredibly polluting and destructive fashion is globally. It's the second most polluting industry in the world. And when you recognize that we're all part of a capitalist structure that is exploitative and damaging to the planet, then you understand that in order to talk about climate justice, you do need to dismantle systemic racism, because it's the Black and brown countries that are producing the vast majority of our produce, or being exploited, raped and pillaged. And we've heard the narrative out of Africa. Actually, billions more pounds leaves Africa than comes in as so-called aid. And if you can wrap your head around that, there's statistics in Google, you can look for it yourself. And so, yeah, for me, the idea that we talk about climate justice without talk about racial justice is a non-starter. It means you are only talking about maybe a sustainable method, which is not really dismantling the problem. The way to dismantle the problem is to talk about regenerative systems. So we talk about permaculture within the gardening sphere, but yes, kind of lost my train of thought there. But I hope you got what I was talking about there. Did that make sense?
That's great. Thank you, Val. Thank you. Sandra or Dre, would you like to respond at all to that question of climate justice versus racial justice? And if not, I can move on to, there's a whole host of further questions. Were you going to say something, Dre?
Yes, I'm happy to speak on that as well. I think Dee mentioned that it's so provocative. The title is provocative. I do agree. And it's something that I'm equally still exploring as well. But to speak around it, what I can say is climate action requires an intersectional approach that takes into account the most impacted communities. And I do think that that conversation is starting to pick up more, which is really important. And when we think about those communities, we think about, you know, the pollution, the processing, the natural disasters that are happening. And so climate change, for me, it's important that racial justice isn't lost within that discussion. I don't necessarily, and in saying that, I think it's important to ensure that there isn't a division and that there is inclusivity within it, and knowing that those most affected it's going to have a different impact or cost upon them. And I think about, you know, climate refugees is the word, the framing of it is now. And, you know, how are we also supporting in it? And I think about like the national borders. I mean, yes, it has something to do with support with nationality, but if we think about those who are fleeing the most, is those who are also equally impacted by climate justice. So to me, it's more important that that it isn't lost, but it's mainly to say that I hope that racial justice shouldn't be lost within the climate justice discussion. And I'll stop there.
I'd just like to add to that climate justice, in my view, it's kind of like, is a concept, right? It's a concept that examines things like human rights. So climate justice is human rights. So if something is not right, then it's not right. We know it's not right. What are we going to do to make it right? You know, it addresses the collective rights. We all have a voice. We all have a voice. That these conversations are necessary. We need to act on this. We need to, because the thing about the difference between the West and Africa, and the West and indigenous countries is quite a big difference. One takes, the other one gives, right? And that's still the colonial approach. One takes and one gives. So just like not alkaline, just like a pH scale, we need to find our ground and find the middle so that we can move forward and we can make it a better today. And we could, yeah. So that's I just wanted to put that in. We need to really, you know, look at solutions and examine those solutions and start putting some solutions forefront. Yeah. And also embracing our history, you know, and start addressing some of these responsibilities and taking up some roles to address our history, to follow and to be guided by what our ancestors already started. Because I truly believe that we're just a representation of our ancestors. We're just our ancestors back again, just in a different time, in a different frame. But it seems like the fight is still the same. But we really need to get past that. We really, really need to make some change and some good changes. And we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another interesting question from Leonida Odongo. Do you have any challenges with criminalization of Indigenous seeds? In Kenya, this is one of the things that we are grappling with. Is there anybody that would be able to respond to this question?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't quite understand the question.
Yeah, and maybe if Leonida is there, if you would like to elaborate on the question. Do you have any challenges with criminalization of Indigenous seeds? In Kenya, this is one of the things that we are grappling with.
Me personally, I have to say, I find it quite disturbing that natural seeds are being played with. I don't do unnatural seeds. If a flower seeds, to me that's natural. That's where I'm getting my seeds from. And you know, all this, all of this is you know what it is, money. It's money. So, but we what we need to do is address is, in my opinion, what needs to be done is looking at ways that we can, yes, live off nature, yes, make money off nature without exploiting nature, because nature gives us what we need. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, there's, if money is the case, there's plenty of it to be made, but no need to exploit. Add to it. You know, when people say money is not grown on trees, I completely disagree. I think money is grown on trees, because look, pretty much everything that we do, yeah, it comes from nature. Your pharmaceutical comes from nature, your clothes come from nature, and your homes. So yeah, that's, yeah, I'm quite
Everything starts with soil.
exactly. Soil is life. Soil is definitely, yes, exactly, Sister Val. Soil is life.
But what you're explaining is, again, this economic system based on capitalism. You know, we live in a space where it seems to be okay to put money before profit, before people and planet. I think the younger generation are the ones who are going to make those changes, but you know, just the fact that this is exemplifying the issue with Black and brown countries being, as you just mentioned earlier, about being providers, and then another part of the world is actually just taken, which is creating a huge imbalance, and this so-called climate change, but actually at the root of it is an economic racial injustice. That is the root of it all.
Absolutely.
I think we've got someone's hand up.
Before we go to that hand, just wanted to respond to the question. Was it Leonie? I can't remember whose question it was, but it was about the criminalization of Indigenous seeds. At the moment, I personally have not experienced that. I have just ordered some seeds from home to come here. I hope they make it. But I'm also aware in Kenya, specifically, I have a friend there, and we've been having that discussion about seeds because I was hoping that they would be able to send me seeds. And we had a very in-depth conversation about, you know, even them putting the seeds in the mail. Well, they have seeds. They are a seed provider, but just the loops in terms of being able to send the seeds internationally, and the impact that it could potentially have onto them, but also just knowing how many many countries, particularly in Africa and India as well, are being criminalized because of seeds. And it's quite scary to know that people are being prosecuted. Some are, you know, losing their livelihood and their stock, their farms, persecution because of that. Has that been something that I've experienced here? No, it hasn't been, but trying to access and source different seeds from farmers that I know across the globe has shown a greater light to how it is quite problematic. And it is something I think that we should be doing more about, in terms of, because once we lose those seeds, we lose a part of our history, we lose a part of our freedom, really. And then, you know, the seeds that we're left with are just GMO seeds. So we have to, we definitely, there needs to be more talk about the loss of seeds, and the erosion of seeds, the eradication of seeds. So I personally haven't experienced the criminalization of it. I'm aware that criminalization is an issue, and it is something, me in particularly, who's looking into, you know, seed histories more, is we'll be looking into that a bit more as well. So thank you for that question. And yeah, and I think, is it Dina has a question? Your hand has been raised.
Yes, good evening again, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful stories and sharing a bit more of the project that's going on. I'm sure most of it is, I'm from Scotland, and I'm thinking most of it is in England. I wanted just to comment on same question that you just previously answered. I wasn't very clear at the beginning, but I wanted to hear from any of the speakers tonight, because I feel like you're doing more likely the same in terms of seed testing. I think Sister Sandra, if I'm not wrong, you did mention that you grow different products, vegetables. It was good to hear some of the things like even butternut and stuff like that. So what I wanted to know how your experience has been in terms of testing such seeds that maybe most of it is quite indigenous. And also again on criminalization, what I wanted to know is if you, like, for example, export some seeds from maybe Africa or elsewhere outside the UK, do you have support in terms of where you have to test them, or they have to be around before you try them? I have a little bit of space in my back garden, but it's been challenging to get access to land. But before that, I'm just trying different seeds to see if they can grow actually here in Glasgow. So yeah, I wanted to know as well, what's your experience like just trying out different seeds?
You know, something that we do at GoGrow With Love, and this is just because it just happened, nature just happened that way, especially when you're busy doing so many things. You allow nature to be. So when you allow nature to be, you will see how much nature actually gives you. So what we can do as well, this is a part of permaculture. Really, when you enter a land, you observe the land for the first 3 years, right? So now you get connected with the land, you learn from the land, you see what's there, and what is in there. And in that space, abundance, you're gifted abundance, you're gifted with abundance. So if you just allow the land to rest for even 3 months, you will see the abundance of seeds that you're going to receive, the abundance of roots that you can dig out and you can plant. So this whole thing of seeds and taking it doesn't come from our traditions. We don't take, we're gifted. And seeds are not just seeds. You can have a seed. Look, give you a very, very 10-second story. I have a friend who is a biologist. No, not a horticulturalist. Biologist. And he found a box of seeds, right? And it turned out that box, it was from before the World War I. Now, and he planted the seeds. Some of them came up, some of them didn't. But some did, and the ones that did were unknown crops to the UK. So you see, a seed is not just a seed. A seed is a pot of life. You don't know what you're going to get until you get it. One. And two, the only way that you're going to get a seed is for a plant, right? So, and there's plenty of plants out there. So, my opinion and my advice is to, if you have the time, to just, experiment, observe, and learn. Thank you. Dina, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. One last question before maybe anybody else can comment on. Unfortunately, one thing I forgot to mention, here in Scotland, we struggle so much in terms of soil, as in some parts of the Scotland, especially Glasgow, the soil is quite contaminated. So we grow so much using the, grow boxes, using the soil that we buy in maybe some of the places. So and there's so much of using I'm not sure if anybody can help me out, but you have to grow using the growing boxes where you put the soil. So you're not actually growing or planting direct from the soil or from the soil, but you have to actually maybe in the boxes and stuff like that. So it's so much to do with growing maybe in polytunnels or using those boxes. So I don't know if any of you you have experience growing from that, but at least there's so much sunlight from London comparing to here. What's been your experience trying out these indigenous plants or seeds using the polytunnels and observing the calendar, growing calendar? What's your experience with that?
I'm going to answer this one very quickly, and then I'll pass over to Sister Val or Sister Dre. There's many methods that you can use to grow indigenous seed in the UK that you may not or wouldn't particularly grow in this country due to the climate. You can grow, like you said, in polytunnels. You can grow in hot boxes. These are boxes that are made specifically to keep the roots of these tropical seeds warm, because it's warm, isn't it? And this country is quite, well, it wasn't that warm, but climate is changing now. So, and the other thing about the soil being contaminated, organic matter, you just need to put life. That just means that your soil does not, it doesn't have that much life on it. It's been contaminated. Your role now to assist Mother Nature, to assist this, is now to put life into the soil, to add your organic matter, to add your vegetable peels and your manure and your leaf molds, and build up the soil health. And that will, and that's what I encourage you to do. That will help. I know. And then Sister Val or Sister Dre.
I agree. The only thing in addition that I would add to that is also just know what condition that seed that you're planting likes. And when you're deciding which method that, Sandra's just mentioned, try to mimic that as much as possible. So just, again, knowing what its needs are and making sure that you're curating an environment that will be nourishing for that.
And give your babies love, This is life that we're talking about. Your babies, they need love. Your plants and your seeds, they all need love, just like you. You talk to them, you sing to them, you show them love. And you're going to see, some pretty amazing things will happen. Love is the key.
Also, document what you are trying as well. I don't think that we do that enough. And I must admit, I'm sometimes bad at it as well. But it's important to, make a note. So if you tried, unless you're trying all methodologies at once, or if you've had, trial and error, because it might be that, if you're trying a polytunnel, maybe it was the temperature that was a bit off. And if you tried all methodologies and it didn't work, then it's looking at what you've done and then going back and tweaking that. Think about it as like cooking. If you might need to add a bit more, or next time you try a dish, you might like, I'm not going to put as much as that in as I did the time before. So it's a bit of, balancing, seeing if what you tried the first time didn't work, then potentially trying something else, but making some adjustments. Yeah. I am mindful of time. We have about 5 more minutes. Are there any pressing questions? I must admit,
there are loads of questions, which I think is testament to the dynamism and interest in the room. So that's fantastic. And maybe if we can take some of those questions onto the chat and discussion platforms after the session. We were thinking to come back to this question of financing. So maybe if there's anybody that could briefly talk to that, this question of what has been your experience or journey in financing and accessing land and food growing spaces. So yeah, we only had a couple of minutes left, but if there's anybody that can respond to that quickly.
Yes, so in some cases we're in a little bit of a conundrum, being on both sides of the seeking finance and assessing bids. And often unfortunately, sometimes within our community, we're not writing bids in the right manner. We're not ticking all the boxes. So you might have a great idea, but if we're not putting the right answers in the right places, our idea, no matter how great it is being shunned to one side. And I'm seeing this with my own eyes, and it's very painful to watch. And then within the bid writing or the bid assessing process itself, absolutely, Obi, you've got to speak their language. Within the bid assessing process itself, there isn't enough diversity. So I found myself in a situation writing for a bid for and on behalf of Coco Collective, which was meant to be for Black-led gardens, didn't get it, sent them a blasting email, and I was like, what is going on? He then proceeds to tell me that there's a series of urban gardens that have received the same fund. And I was like, well, how many of these are actually Black-led? Now, there's a difference between having a fund available for diversity and inclusivity, and then a fund available for lived experienced organizations. So I think we need to rejig and rehash the whole sort of access and finance, I think, for and this is across the board, not just within the horticultural industry or food growing industry, but across the board, this is posing problems for Black-led organizations. I think that's my 4 minutes.
I would like to say just very quickly that self-sustainability is key also. It's coming away from this dependent finances, bids and to use those finances as a start point, so that you can go onto the road of being independent. And meaning that you're producing from the land, and the land is bringing you that income. And that could be in a number of different things. I mean, like I said, everything that we do comes from the land, but so it's just really being innovative about ideas and how we market it. But I think that the way forward is enterprise, definitely enterprise, self-sustainability. Build your own home if you can, the resources that you have in the back of your garden. I don't know. What I'm saying is that we need to start looking at being independent and moving that forward and teaching our children how to be independent through nature.
With our seconds to go, we haven't received any funding at this time. We will be applying for funding. A lot of the funding, because I've done previous growing projects, I was able to use some of that funding, and then the funding I just decided to give to ensure the nourishment of this project. One of the courses that I taught, all of the funding from that I put straight into the garden. So next year, it is now this year, we will be exploring more funding. But as Sandra mentioned, it isn't about dependency. It is about, building on and having independence from there. We'll have to take all further questions to the WOVA community box. It's been amazing, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today, this evening. I know there's a million questions that we did not get to, but if you can take your question to the WOVA, we will try our best to get to them as much as possible. Naomi has just dropped the box there, the link there to that chat. So that would be great to be able to pick those up. We would really love to be able to answer all of those questions. Are there any final comments or anything that either one wants to say besides thank you?
Just thank you for everyone being part of this. I really hope it's been enlightening. I know that some of you have said that you have been enlightened by this conversation, which is great. And please continue these conversations and continue these conversations with your local authorities as well, and those who are, you know, giving out these green spaces and food growing spaces. We do need to make changes at you know, policy level as well as on the ground level. So yeah, really happy to be part of this. Thank you so much, Lion, as well, for spearheading the way. Amazing group of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. Thank you. And also, just I want to say that the Land Workers Alliance does have a BPOC group, which is fairly new, that is being put in place to support melanin-rich land workers through various different things. So it's a work in progress. So yourself, Valerie, yourself, Sister Dre, please do join. I'm sure that you will make a great impact. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I just want to make a quick statement. We do not have an Instagram page. I see that there's an Instagram link, maybe coming soon one day. I just dropped the link in order to reach us. We pretty much operate on a WhatsApp group. Again, it was about staying offline as long as possible so we can be in relationship. So don't look for us at that link. You won't find anything. And whatever you do find, it ain't us. But you can find us in the Google box that I've just dropped in there.
We've been tagging you left, right, and center. So who are we tagging?
I know, right?
Blessings.
Blessings. Thank you. Okay. The session has come to an end now, yeah? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Give thanks.
Have a good night.
That was great. Thank you.
Welcome, sweet dreams, everyone, when you get there.